The massive fortress world of Nexus Prime hung like a jewel in space, surrounded by the most advanced defense systems the Galactic Concordat had developed in its 5,000 years of dominance. Admiral Ta of the Concordat Defense Force reviewed the morning security briefings with practiced disinterest. "Another report about those humans," his aide Jun remarked. "They've apparently developed basic FTL capability." "Primitives," Ta dismissed. "They'll be contained like all the others." The emergency klaxon shattered their conversation. On the main view screen, a vessel of unfamiliar design had appeared in high orbit. It was angular, dark, and somehow threatening despite its solitary presence. "Impossible," Ta whispered. "No ship could bypass our detection grid." The message that followed was brief. "This is Captain Sunny of the human spaceship Nemesis. We request diplomatic talks regarding certain irregularities in your treatment of developing civilizations." Admiral Ta stared at the screen in disbelief. The defense systems of Nexus Prime were the pride of the Concordat, a network of sensors that could detect a shuttle at the edge of the solar system. Yet this human vessel had appeared without warning, directly above their most protected world. "Scan that ship," Tad ordered, his voice tight with controlled anger. Jun's fingers moved quickly across his console. "The scan cannot penetrate their hull, Admiral. But based on size alone, it appears to be a warship." "One warship," Ta laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Do these humans think they can threaten the Concordat with a single vessel?" The communications officer, Garam, turned from her station. "Admiral, the human captain is requesting a direct channel to you." Ta straightened his uniform. The humans were bold. He would give them that. Perhaps they deserved a moment of his time before he ordered their ship destroyed, as an example to other emerging species. "Put them through," he ordered. The screen changed to show a human female in a dark uniform adorned with silver markings. Her face was calm, her posture straight. "Admiral Tai," Captain Sunny said with a small nod. "Thank you for accepting my call." "You have violated Concordat space, human," Tai replied coldly. "Your presence here is an act of aggression." Sun He's expression did not change. "Is it aggression to seek conversation? We simply wish to discuss the Concordat's policy of technological suppression against developing species." Tai's eyes narrowed. "Your information is incorrect. The Concordat guides younger species for their own protection. Is that what you call it?" Sun He touched a control, and the screen split to show what appeared to be Concordat military records. "These are orders to sabotage human colony ships. 3 of our outposts were destroyed with all hands lost. 2,300 lives ended because the Concordat feared our advancement." Jun gasped beside Ta. The Admiral shot him a warning look before turning back to the screen. "Where did you get these files?" Ta demanded. "That's not important," Sun He replied. "What matters is that humanity knows what the Concordat has been doing. Not just to us, but to dozens of species across the galaxy." Tai's mind raced. These were top-secret operations, authorized by the highest levels of the Concordat Council. If the humans had access to this information, their intelligence capabilities were far beyond what any reports had suggested. "I will need to consult with the Council," Ta said carefully. "Until then, your ship must withdraw to the system boundary." "I'm afraid we can't do that, Admiral," Sun He said. "We will remain in orbit until we have spoken with the full Council." Tai fought to maintain his composure. "You are in no position to make demands. The Nexus Defense Fleet consists of 300 warships. Your vessel, impressive as it might be, cannot stand against such force." Captain Sun He smiled slightly. "You might be surprised, Admiral. But to show our peaceful intentions, we will allow you to scan one small section of our ship." The communications officer reported, "They're transmitting coordinates for a permitted scan area." "Admiral." Ta nodded, and moments later, Jun's console displayed the results. The color drained from his face. "Admiral," Jun whispered, "the energy readings, they're off the scale. Their power core technology is unlike anything in our database." Todd looked back at the human captain. For the first time in his long career, he felt a chill of uncertainty. "We don't want conflict, Admiral," Sun, he said softly. "But we will not leave until the Concordat acknowledges its actions against humanity and other species." The Admiral's second-in-command, Mio, leaned close. "Sir, I've just received word from the outer defense perimeter. They detected unusual energy readings before this ship appeared. It's possible they have some form of cloaking technology we can't detect." Tay's mind spun with implications. If the humans could cloak a warship this size, what else might they be hiding? "The Council will see you in one standard day," Ta said finally. "Until then, your ship will remain under observation." "That is acceptable," Sun, he replied. "We look forward to productive discussions." When the communication ended, Tai turned to his senior staff. "I want everything we have on human development, and put the fleet on alert status." "Do you think they're bluffing, Admiral?" Mio asked. Tai looked at the dark ship on the view screen. "I don't know, but one ship, no matter how advanced, cannot threaten Nexus Prime." On board the Nemesis, Captain Sun He turned to her first officer, Dong Yun. "They took the bait," she said. "They're curious enough to grant us an audience rather than attacking immediately." Dong Yun nodded. "And the rest of the fleet remains undetected?" "Yes," Sun He confirmed. "The 20 ships in position throughout their territory report no detection." She walked to the large window that showed the glittering fortress world below them. 5,000 years of unopposed rule had made the Concordat arrogant. They couldn't imagine that a species they considered primitive could pose any real threat. "Soon they'll learn that humans don't follow the expected path," Sun He said quietly. "We didn't build bigger ships or more powerful weapons. We found the gaps in their perfect system instead." She watched as Concordat patrol vessels began to form a ring around the Nemesis. They thought they were containing a dangerous intruder. They didn't yet understand that the real danger had been among them for months. "Everything is proceeding as planned," she said. "Let's hope they choose to talk rather than fight." But the subtle smile on her face suggested she was prepared for either outcome. The Concordat Council chamber fell silent as Captain Sun He finished speaking. Her crisp uniform and calm demeanor contrasted with the growing agitation of the alien delegates. "You have monitored our secure communications," Councillor Kyung sputtered, his facial tentacles quivering in outrage. "For decades," Sun He confirmed, activating a holographic display showing countless intercepted transmissions, including your orders to sabotage our colony ships and disrupt our developmental timeline. Lieutenant Minho stepped forward with a formal document. "We demand recognition of human sovereign space and reparations for the 3 colonies you destroyed." Councillor Kyung laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the chamber. "You come here in one ship and make demands. Perhaps we should demonstrate why the Concordat has ruled unchallenged for millennia." "I wouldn't recommend that approach," Captain Sun He replied softly. The 7 members of the Concordat Council sat in their raised seats, looking down at the human delegation. The chamber was designed to intimidate, with towering walls of polished black stone and ancient battle flags hanging from the ceiling. For 5,000 years, representatives from hundreds of worlds had stood where Captain Sun He now stood, and all had bowed to the Concordat's will. Councillor Kyung's tentacles continued to writhe in agitation. As the eldest member of the council, he was not accustomed to being threatened, especially not by representatives of a species that had only achieved space travel a few centuries ago. "Your evidence is fabricated," he declared, waving the dismissive limb at the holographic display. "The Concordat guides developing species. We do not sabotage them." "Then how do you explain this?" Sun He asked, tapping a control on her wrist device. The hologram shifted to show a recording. A Concordat military vessel approached a small human colony ship. There was no warning, no communication. The Concordat ship fired, and the colony vessel shattered into burning fragments. The timestamp showed this had happened 8 years earlier. 2,000 colonists were on that ship, Lieutenant Minho said quietly, including 300 children. Murmurs spread through the observing delegates from various worlds. Captain Sunhee noted the reactions carefully. Not all members of the Concordat appeared comfortable with what they were seeing. Counselor Hana, representing the newer worlds in the Concordat, leaned forward. These actions, if genuine, were not approved by the full council. They were approved by the Military Oversight Committee, Sunhee replied, changing the display again to show signed orders. Your name appears on this document, Counselor Kyung. The chamber erupted in shouted questions. Kyung slammed his ceremonial staff against the floor, restoring order. Enough, he bellowed. Even if these accusations were true, which I do not concede, you are in no position to make demands. You stand in the heart of our power with one ship. Perhaps your species lacks basic understanding of strategic reality. Captain Sunhee remained perfectly calm. We understand reality quite well, Counselor. That's why we're here with reasonable requests rather than demands for total surrender. This statement caused confusion among the council members. Counselor Bomi, the military strategist, narrowed her 4 eyes. Total surrender, she repeated. You speak as though you could force such terms. Lieutenant Minho opened the formal document he carried. Our requests are simple. First, recognition of human sovereign space, including all currently established colonies. Second, reparations for the 3 colony ships destroyed by Concordat forces. Third, an end to the policy of technological suppression against all developing species. Absurd, Kyung spat. The Concordat does not negotiate with primitives. We prefer the term emerging civilization. Sunhee corrected mildly. And negotiation would be in everyone's best interest. Counselor Bomi studied the human captain with growing concern. You display unusual confidence for someone whose entire species could be erased with a single command. Perhaps I have reason for confidence, Sunhee suggested. She nodded to Lieutenant Minho, who activated another holographic display. This one showed the Nemesis in orbit around Nexus Prime, surrounded by Concordat vessels. Your ships have had us surrounded for 24 hours, Sunhee noted. Yet you haven't fired. Do you know why? We wish to hear your ridiculous demands before destroying you, Kyung said, but his tentacles had stilled, betraying his uncertainty. No, Sunhee countered. Your tactical analysis suggested caution. Your scans detected energy signatures you couldn't identify. Your intelligence officers advise waiting, and that hesitation may have saved millions of lives. The display changed again, showing a complex diagram of Nexus Prime's defensive systems. We've had access to your networks for years, Sunhee explained. We know the weaknesses in your defense grid. We know the bypass codes for your planetary shields. We know exactly how to disable your fleet with minimal casualties. A shocked silence fell over the council chamber. You're bluffing, Counselor Kyung said, but his voice lacked conviction. Captain Sunhee smiled slightly. Admiral Tai, she called out, knowing the military commander was watching from another room. The access code for your personal command console is Ta-7 Nexus Guardian Prime. Would you like me to continue with the planetary defense override sequences? The chamber doors burst open as Admiral Tai rushed in, his face pale. How do you know that code? He demanded. The same way we know everything else, Sunhee replied. We've been watching and learning while you dismissed us as primitives. Counselor Bomi stood abruptly. This meeting will recess for 1 hour while the council confers in private. As the council members filed out, Lieutenant Minho leaned close to Captain Sunhee. They're scanning the Nemesis again, more intensively this time. Let them, Sunhee replied quietly. They still can't detect the quantum shielding or the phase weaponry. In the private chamber, the council argued fiercely. We cannot submit to these demands, Kyung shouted. It would undermine 5,000 years of Concordat authority. We cannot ignore that they somehow penetrated our most secure systems, Bomi countered. If they can access command codes, what else can they do? Admiral Tai's expression was grim. The human ship has technology we cannot identify. My analysts believe their vessel could disable multiple Concordat ships before being destroyed. One ship cannot stand against our fleet, Kyung insisted. Are you certain it's only one ship? Counselor Hannah asked quietly. If they could appear undetected at Nexus Prime, how do we know there aren't more? The question hung in the air, unanswered. When they returned to the chamber, Captain Sunny and Lieutenant Minho stood exactly as before, patient and composed. The council has decided, Kyung announced, his voice heavy with suppressed rage. Your demands are rejected. You will surrender your vessel and submit to Concordat authority, or you will be destroyed. Captain Sunny sighed. I had hoped for a more reasonable response. She touched her communication device. Nemesis, this is Captain Sunny. Implement Phase 2. The lights in the council chamber flickered and died, then returned at half strength. The holographic displays vanished. What have you done? Admiral Ta demanded. A small demonstration. Sunny explained. We've temporarily disabled the power grid for this section of Nexus Prime. A more extensive demonstration would be regrettable, but possible. She looked directly at Counselor Kyung. You've ruled unchallenged for millennia because no one could challenge you. That has changed. We don't want war, Counselor. We want justice. The choice is yours. The Concordat battle fleet surrounded the Nemesis, weapons charged and targeting systems locked. Final warning, human vessel. Fleet Commander Juan transmitted. Surrender or be destroyed. Inside the Nemesis, Captain Sunhee nodded to her weapons officer. Engage quantum phase shields, Lieutenant Juwu. When the Concordat ships fired, their energy weapons seemed to simply disappear into the human vessel. The return fire was surgical. No ships destroyed, but command systems across the Concordat fleet suddenly went dark. Impossible, Commander Juan whispered as his flagship drifted powerless. On Nexus Prime, the planetary defense grid flickered and died as precisely calculated human weapons found vulnerabilities no one had suspected existed. How? Demanded Counselor Kyung, as the view screens showed the impenetrable fortress world now completely exposed. The command center of the Concordat flagship fell into chaos. Emergency lights cast an eerie red glow over the panicked crew. Fleet Commander Juan pressed button after button on his control panel, but nothing responded. His vessel, the pride of the Concordat fleet, was now nothing more than a metal shell drifting in space. Restore power, he shouted. Get weapons back online. His chief engineer, Dara, worked frantically at her station. Sir, the systems are intact, but they won't respond to commands. It's like something rewrote our control protocols. On the main view screen, the human vessel Nemesis hung in space, completely undamaged despite absorbing the combined firepower of 30 Concordat warships. No scorch marks marred its dark hull. No debris floated around it. It was as if the attack had never happened. All ships report the same status. Communications Officer Jinsu reported, using an emergency backup system. Weapons offline. Engines offline. We're dead in space, Commander. Juan stared at the screen in disbelief. What kind of technology can do this? The answer came moments later as the Nemesis opened a channel to all Concordat vessels simultaneously. This is Captain Sunny of the HSS Nemesis, her calm voice announced. Your ships have not been destroyed because we do not wish unnecessary casualties. However, you are now witnessing what happens when you underestimate an enemy. On the bridge of the Nemesis, Captain Sunny stood tall as her crew efficiently carried out their tasks. Lieutenant Juwu monitored the quantum phase shields, which had successfully converted the Concordat's energy weapons into harmless radiation. All Concordat vessels neutralized, Captain, reported Tactical Officer Seojin. Our targeted EMP pulses achieved 100% effectiveness. Their ships are intact but powerless. And the planetary defense grid? Sunhee asked. Disabled as planned, confirmed Lieutenant Juwu. The network vulnerabilities we identified were accurate. Their backup systems are trying to engage, but our algorithms are blocking them faster than they can adapt. Captain Sunhee nodded. Excellent. Now for Phase 3. She turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to the Concordat Council chambers. Back on Nexus Prime, the Council watched in horror as their view screens showed their fleet. 300 of the most powerful warships ever built, floating helplessly around the single human vessel. This is impossible, Councillor Kyung repeated, his tentacles lying limp with shock. No species has ever penetrated our defenses. Admiral Ta stood frozen, staring at the tactical displays showing the complete shutdown of Nexus Prime's legendary defense grid. 5,000 years of technological development, rendered useless in moments. Sir, a junior officer reported, we're detecting energy signatures throughout the system. They match the human vessel. More ships? Tai asked, his voice barely a whisper. Unknown, sir. They're masked somehow, but the energy patterns are distinctive. The main screen in the council chamber activated, showing Captain Sun Hee's face. Concordat Council, she said, as you can now see, your military superiority was an illusion. We could have destroyed your fleet. We chose not to. We could have bombarded Nexus Prime. We chose not to. These were choices, not limitations. Councillor Bomi stepped forward. What is it you want, Captain? Why demonstrate your power without using it to destroy us? Because destruction has never been our goal, Sun Hee replied. Humans don't seek to replace one tyranny with another. We seek balance. Councillor Kyung found his voice at last. You expect us to believe that? After this unprovoked attack, Captain Sun Hee raised an eyebrow. Unprovoked. You destroyed 3 of our colony ships. You killed thousands of our people. You rejected peaceful negotiations. And still, we have not taken a single Concordat life today. Who, exactly, is the aggressor here? In the silence that followed, a new alert sounded in the council chamber. What now? Demanded Admiral Ta. A technician looked up from his console, his face pale. Sir, we're detecting more ships. Many more ships. Across Concordat space, human vessels appeared as if from nowhere. They had been hiding in asteroid fields, behind moons, in gas-giant atmospheres, positions carefully chosen months earlier. What had seemed to be a single ship's desperate gamble was revealed as a coordinated strategic operation. We have been among you for some time, Captain Sun Hee explained. Studying, learning, adapting. You believe your technology was beyond our understanding. You were wrong. On the Nemesis, Lieutenant Minho approached Captain Sun Hee. The rest of the fleet reports ready, Captain. All strategic positions secured. Sun Hee nodded. Tell them to maintain position, but take no aggressive action unless fired upon. She turned back to the communication screen, where the Concordat Council watched in stunned silence. The quantum phase technology that protected the Nemesis from your weapons is just one of many advancements we've developed, she told them. Your scientists believed energy weapons were the pinnacle of military technology. We looked for alternatives. Your engineers built bigger, more powerful ships. We built smarter, more adaptable ones. What is this quantum phase technology? Councillor Bomi asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. Put simply, Sun Hee replied, it exists partially outside normal spacetime. Your weapon's fire passes through the phase field and is redirected. The energy is neither blocked nor absorbed. It simply never interacts with our ship at all. Admiral Ta slumped into his chair. All these centuries, we never considered such an approach. That's the difference between us, Sun Hee said. You stopped looking for new solutions because the old ones had always worked. Humans never had that luxury. We evolved on a harsh world where adaptation was necessary for survival. She paused, letting her words sink in. Now shall we discuss those reasonable requests again? Or would you prefer a more extensive demonstration of our capabilities? Councillor Kyung looked around at his fellow council members, then at the screen showing their helpless fleet. For the first time in 5,000 years, the Concordat faced a force it could not overwhelm. We will discuss your terms, he said finally, his voice heavy with the weight of inevitable change. Captain Sunny nodded. A wise decision, Counselor. Perhaps the beginning of a new era for all our peoples. You never considered we might approach war differently, explained Commander Doyen as more human ships decloaked throughout Concordat space. We evolved on a high-gravity death world where efficiency and adaptability were necessary for survival. The Council watched in horror as displays showed human vessels had been hiding in plain sight for months, positioned at every strategic location in Concordat territory. While you built bigger weapons, we built smarter ones. Tactical Officer Yuma continued. You designed your systems to overpower enemies. We designed ours knowing we would face superior forces. Counselor Minji, representing the younger Concordat species, leaned forward. You could destroy us, yet you still seek talks. Captain Sunhee nodded. Destruction is easy. Building something better requires cooperation. The Grand Council chamber of Nexus Prime had never felt so small. The 7 counselors sat in stunned silence as the tactical displays showed the true extent of the human presence in their territory. What they had believed was a single ship's bold move was revealed as the final step in a carefully planned operation. Commander Doyen stood beside Captain Sunny, his uniform bearing the insignia of Human Intelligence Services. He gestured to the holographic map showing Concordat space, now dotted with the positions of previously hidden human vessels. 57 ships, Admiral Ta muttered, counting the markers. How did we miss them? Because you weren't looking, Doyen explained. Your detection systems are designed to find energy signatures that match known ship types. Our vessels use a different approach. They can operate in a low-energy state that mimics natural phenomena. He pointed to several locations on the map. These ships hid within asteroid fields. These ones masked their signatures to appear as small comets. Others positioned themselves within the atmospheric layers of gas giants. Tactical Officer Yuna stepped forward. She was younger than the other human officers, but her eyes held the sharp intelligence that had come to unnerve the Concordat leadership. Your military doctrine hasn't changed in 2,000 years, she said. You rely on overwhelming force and superior numbers. It works well against enemies who fight the same way. She tapped a control, and the display changed to show design schematics of the human vessels. Our ships are different, she continued. They're smaller, but more adaptable. Each one can change its configuration based on mission requirements. They don't need to return to a shipyard for upgrades. Impossible, said Admiral Tai, but with less conviction than before. Ship systems are too complex for field reconfiguration. Not if they're designed that way from the beginning, Yunho replied. You built your technology to be powerful but fixed. We built ours to evolve. Counselor Kyung's tentacles writhed with suppressed rage. This is all very impressive, humans, but what is your point? To humiliate us before destroying our civilization. Captain Sunhee shook her head. If destruction was our goal, this conversation wouldn't be happening. We've had the capability to cripple the Concordat for months. We chose a different path. Counselor Minji, who represented the species that had joined the Concordat most recently, studied the humans with growing interest. Unlike Kyung, whose species had been part of the Concordat since its founding, Minji's people knew what it meant to adapt to survive. I don't understand, she said. You clearly have military superiority. Why not simply take what you want? Because that would make us no better than those who attacked our colonies, Sunhee replied. And because lasting change cannot be built on conquest alone. Commander Doyen activated another display. This one showed Earth, a blue-green planet that appeared unremarkable at first glance. This is our homeworld, he explained. It has 1.5 times the gravity of Nexus Prime. Its weather systems can generate winds strong enough to level cities. Its oceans can swallow continents. Its temperature ranges from burning heat to freezing cold. The council members watched as images showed massive storms, towering waves, and landscapes ranging from scorching deserts to frozen tundra. Humans evolved in this environment, Doyen continued. We learned to adapt or die. When resources were scarce, we innovated. When threats appeared, we found ways to overcome them. This mindset is embedded in our approach to everything, including warfare. Tactical Officer Yuna highlighted several features of the human ship designs. Our vessels can repair themselves using nanomaterials. They can change their energy signatures to avoid detection. Their weapons are designed to neutralize rather than destroy when possible. And your quantum phase shields? Counselor Bomi asked, her scientific curiosity evident. A direct application of our survival philosophy, Yunha explained. When faced with a superior force, don't try to match its strength. Find a way to make that strength irrelevant. Admiral Taz stood up, his military bearing returning somewhat. You've made your point about your technological superiority. What happens now? Captain Sunhee stepped forward. Now we negotiate as equals, not as conquerors and conquered, but as civilizations with different strengths. Equals. Counselor Kyung scoffed. After this display of force, would you have accepted us as equals otherwise? Sunhee asked quietly. The silence that followed was answer enough. Your civilization has existed for 5,000 years, Sunhee continued. You've achieved wonders that humanity can only admire. Your architectural achievements, your medical advances, your cultural heritage. These are treasures worth preserving. She paused, looking each council member in the eye. But your approach to other species has been deeply flawed. You've suppressed rather than uplifted, controlled rather than collaborated. That must change. Counselor Minji leaned forward, her interest growing. And if it does change, what then? Then we build something new together, Sunhee replied. A galactic community based on mutual respect and shared knowledge. She gestured to Commander Doyen, who activated a final display. It showed technical specifications for various human technologies, medical treatments, agricultural methods, energy systems. These are just some of the advances we're prepared to share, Doyen explained. Not as payment or bribes, but as the beginning of an exchange of knowledge. The council members studied the information with growing interest. Even Counselor Kyung's hostile posture softened slightly as he recognized the potential value of what was being offered. And all you ask in return is that we stop suppressing developing species, Counselor Bomi asked. That and recognition of human sovereignty, Captain Sunhee confirmed. Plus reparations for our destroyed colonies, not to punish, but to acknowledge the wrong and help the families who lost loved ones. Admiral Taz studied the human captain carefully. You truly believe our civilizations can coexist after this? I do, Sunhee replied, because I believe that adaptability is not unique to humans. The Concordat has survived for millennia because it could change when necessary. This is one of those moments. She turned to address the entire council. The question is not whether the Concordat can adapt. The question is whether it is willing to. Counselor Minji stood. I, for one, am interested in learning more about this proposed new relationship. Slowly, other council members began to nod in agreement. Only Counselor Kyung remained visibly resistant, but even he could see the writing on the wall. It seems, he said reluctantly, that we have much to discuss. Captain Sunhee smiled. Yes, Counselor. I believe we do. 5 years later, the transformed Nexus Prime hosted representatives from 200 species. The Central Spire, once the exclusive domain of the Concordat leadership, now housed the Galactic Cooperative Council. The defensive innovations from the Talon delegation complement our phase technology perfectly, Engineer Junho explained as he guided Captain Sunhee, now Admiral, through the new shipyard. And the Ricari bioadaptive systems would have taken us centuries to develop on our own, added Science Director Hyun. When the long-range sensors detected the approach of an extragalactic force, the response was immediate and unified. Ships of human and former Concordat design formed a defensive line that would have been impossible just years before. Admiral Sunhee stood on the bridge of the Nexus Defender, surrounded by a crew representing 12 different species. We stand stronger together than any of us could have stood alone, she announced as the Allied fleet moved to protect their shared civilization. The galaxy had learned that true strength never came from walls and weapons, but from the willingness to adapt and grow together. Admiral Sunhee walked through the grand hall of the Galactic Cooperative Council, her footsteps echoing on the polished stone floor. The building had once been the exclusive domain of the Concordat elite. Now it buzzed with activity as representatives from 200 different species moved through its corridors. 5 years had changed everything. 5 years since a single human warship had revealed the truth that had shaken the foundations of galactic civilization. 5 years of difficult but necessary transformation. Admiral Sunhee, a voice called out. She turned to see Counselor Minji hurrying toward her. The former junior member of the Concordat Council now served as one of the 5 elected leaders of the new Galactic Cooperative. The shipyard inspection went well. Minji asked as they walked together. Better than expected, Sunhee replied. The integration of different technologies is proceeding faster than our most optimistic projections. They stopped at a large window overlooking the massive shipyard that orbited Nexus Prime. Ships of various designs moved in coordinated patterns as construction drones swarmed around newer vessels still taking shape. 5 years ago, I would never have believed this possible, Minji admitted. The idea of sharing our most advanced technologies with other species, the old Concordat would have considered it madness. Sometimes it takes a shock to break old patterns, Sunhee said. Their conversation was interrupted as Engineer Junho approached, accompanied by Science Director Hyun. Both wore the new uniforms of the cooperative fleet, distinguished by insignia representing their species of origin. Admiral, Junho said with a respectful nod, the final tests on the Nexus Defender are complete. She's ready for your inspection. Sunhee smiled. The Nexus Defender represented everything the new cooperative stood for. A vessel that combined technologies from 17 different species into something greater than any could have created alone. Excellent timing, she said. I understand we'll need her sooner than expected. Hyun nodded, his expression serious. The long-range detection grid picked up unusual readings from beyond the galaxy's edge. Something is coming, Admiral. The Council has been informed. Sunhee asked. A special session has been called, Minji confirmed. But first, they want your assessment from the front line. The 4 of them boarded a shuttle that would take them to the Nexus Defender. Through the viewport, Sunhee could see dozens of ships moving into formation. Vessels of human design flying alongside rebuilt Concordat cruisers and the distinctive org ships of the Ricari. Remember when Counselor Kyung used to say that other species couldn't be trusted with advanced technology? Junho remarked as they watched a Talon ship execute a perfect docking maneuver with a human station. Kyung has changed his tune considerably, Minji said with a small laugh. I saw him yesterday, supervising a joint training exercise for new cadets. The shuttle docked with the Nexus Defender, and Sunhee felt a surge of pride as she stepped aboard. The ship was a marvel of cooperative engineering. Its core used human quantum phase technology, but this had been enhanced by Concordat power systems and Talon stability fields. The navigation systems incorporated Ricari biological interfaces that could adapt to the pilot's needs in real time. Admiral on deck, announced the first officer as Sunhee entered the bridge. The crew stood at attention. Humans working alongside former Concordat species and representatives from worlds that had been considered primitive just years before. Sunhee nodded, and they returned to their duties. Status report, she requested. All systems functional, Admiral, reported the tactical officer, a young human named Jin. The new integrated defense grid is performing at 127% of projected capacity. The fleet is forming up as ordered, added Dara, a former Concordat officer who now served as communications chief. All 78 vessels report ready status. Sunhee took her place in the command chair, put the approaching anomaly on screen. The main display activated, showing a distant section of space where something was distorting the normal starfield patterns. It was still too far away for detailed analysis, but the energy readings were unlike anything in their database. Whatever it is, it's big, Science Director Hyun observed, and moving faster than should be possible through normal space. Admiral Sunny studied the readings carefully. Time to intercept. At current velocity, 14 hours, Jin replied. Sunny nodded. Enough time to prepare, but not enough to waste. She turned to Communications Officer Dara. Open a channel to all fleet vessels. The officer complied, and Sunny addressed the assembled ships. This is Admiral Sunny. As you know, our long-range sensors have detected an approaching force of unknown origin and intent. We don't yet know if they come as friends or foes, but we will be prepared either way. She paused, looking around at her diverse crew. 5 years ago, we were divided. The Concordat stood alone, believing isolation was strength. Humanity challenged that belief, not to destroy but to transform. Today, we face whatever comes not as separate species, but as a united galaxy. On the tactical display, she could see the fleet moving into the defensive formation they had practiced. A complex arrangement that placed each ship where its unique capabilities would be most effective. Each of our species brings something vital to this alliance, she continued. Human adaptability, Concordat stability, Talon precision, Rykari intuition, and dozens more contributions that make us stronger together than any of us could be alone. The unknown object grew larger on the screen, its strange energy patterns becoming more defined. Still impossible to identify, but clearly massive and purposeful in its approach. Admiral, Jin reported, it's accelerating. New intercept time, 8 hours. Sunhee nodded calmly. Signal the fleet, move to intercept position Alpha, and open a channel when we're within communication range. You think they'll talk? Engineer Juno asked quietly. I hope so, Sunhee replied. But either way, we're ready. She remembered standing on the bridge of the Nemesis 5 years earlier, facing a Concordat fleet that outgunned her ship 100 to 1. She remembered the fear hidden behind Admiral Tay's threats and the shock when her single vessel had neutralized their entire defense system. She also remembered choosing not to destroy them when she could have. That choice had changed everything. As the Nexus defender moved to the head of the formation, Sunhee felt a sense of completion. What had begun as a desperate gamble to protect humanity had become something far greater, a transformation of galactic civilization itself. Admiral, called out Dara suddenly, I'm receiving a transmission from the approaching object. It's in multiple languages simultaneously. Put it through, Sunhee ordered. A strange, melodic voice filled the bridge, speaking words that somehow shifted between languages while remaining understandable. We have watched your galaxy for centuries, waiting for signs of true cooperation among your species. At last, we see it emerging. Sunhee exchanged surprised glances with her officers before responding. This is Admiral Sunhee of the Galactic Cooperative. We greet you in peace, though we are prepared to defend ourselves if necessary. Defense will not be required, the voice replied. We come to share, not to conquer. Your recent evolution from conflict to cooperation has opened the way for contact. As the massive vessel finally came into visual range, revealing a structure of impossible beauty and complexity, Sunhee smiled. The gamble that had begun with one human warship challenging the galaxy's stronghold had led to something none of them could have imagined. Send word to the Council, she told Communications Officer Dara. Tell them we've made first contact with a new civilization, and tell them we're ready. The galaxy had indeed learned that true strength never came from walls and weapons, but from the willingness to adapt and grow together. And now, that lesson would take them beyond their wildest dreams. The end.